Archaeologists have begun a major new excavation of the Roman city of Pompei. It was destroyed nearly 2,000 years ago after Mount Vesuvius erupted.
Archaeology is a fascinating career where long periods of tedious digging can suddenly lead to explosive discoveries full of mystery and wonder. However, some finds raise more questions than they answer, challenging our current understanding of history. From a bizarre and creepy sarcophagus to a medieval Italian who resembles Barrett from Final Fantasy VII, here are 20 excavations that uncovered mysterious and terrifying things. Number 20. The sound effects of hypogeum Hal Saflieni. In Paola, Malta, lies the hypogeum of Hal Saflieni, a subterranean Neolithic structure from the Saflieni period, which ran from 3300 to 2000 BC. The term hypogeum, derived from the Greek meaning underground, is commonly used to refer to this area. It's believed that the hypogeum served as both a place of worship and a cemetery, as the remains of more than 7,000 people have been discovered there. In addition to the megalithic temples and the Zagra stone circle, it's one of the finest examples of Maltese temple architecture. It all started in 1902 when construction workers excavating cisterns for a new housing complex collapsed through the hypogeum ceiling. The construction workers initially attempted to conceal the shrine, but it was discovered later. Grave goods and human bones were among the artifacts unearthed from the hypogeum, which were sadly discarded without being properly documented. Due to its design, the temple's lowest levels are devoid of natural sunlight. Spots, spirals, and honeycombs serve as the basis for the elaborate ceiling decorations that cover some of the ceiling surface. One of the most important rooms, the Holy of Holies, was apparently designed such that the light from the winter solstice would enter the space through the original hole in the ceiling and illuminate the altar at the front of the room. Pretty spectacular. Number 19. World's oldest cheese unearthed in Egyptian tomb. Killings, wars, sacrificing children. Things were scary in the past, but at least they had cheese. Apparently, in Saqqara, Egypt, archaeologists found a piece of cheese that had been buried 3,300 years ago in the tomb of a pharaoh's official. This is the most ancient cheese ever found. The bad news is you can't eat it, so put down your hammer toast if you're thinking of melting it all over a tasty sandwich. After being locked in a tomb for more than 3,000 years, even cheese can go bad. This wouldn't taste good, no matter how much of anything you add. It was made by mixing cow milk with either goat milk or sheep's milk. Many people also think that it's cursed. I guess that's just one more reason you shouldn't try to grate it on your pasta. If you ate some of this cheese, the curse would have to work pretty quickly to kill you faster than the bacteria that live in it, though. This cheese has one of the common and very dangerous bacteria that make unpasteurized cheese dangerous even today. This bacteria causes brucellosis, a disease that isn't necessarily fatal but is very painful, and it can damage the heart. This cheese would have tasted very sour and had a texture kind of like chèvre that could be spread. High-ranking people in the old city of Memphis liked it, so we know it was probably good. Number 18. Spiral-shaped mass burial. A number of ancient Mesoamerican civilizations, like the Maya and the Aztecs, placed a lot of importance on religious sacrifice and elaborate funeral ceremonies. Archaeologists digging under Mexico City seem to find bones in strange places and arrangements all the time, like this Aztec temple with 32 sets of neck bones and elaborate racks of mounted skulls. Archaeologists at the National Institution of Anthropology and History don't get surprised very often, but this find did just that. Under the Pontifical University of Mexico in the city's Tlalpan neighborhood, they found 10 human skeletons arranged in a spiral, like a white walker. The arms of the skeletons seemed to have been locked together when they were buried. This grave, which is over 2,400 years old, is the strangest find at the site, which has been dug up since 2006. It's also the largest number of skeletons found in a single burial from the pre-classic period of Mesoamerican history. Researchers identified some of the remains as belonging to 2 women and 1 man, as well as a toddler and an infant. It looks like they were buried in a single ritual, but we don't know what it was. There were people of many different ages in the grave, which suggests that they might have represented different stages of life. Number 17. Archaeologists have discovered an ancient Roman hand of God. Archaeologists have found a hand of God from ancient Rome, but the story it tells is tragic, and it has nothing to do with heaven. The hand, which weighed 2.3 kilograms and was made of solid bronze, was found near Hadrian's Wall. It was almost certainly a gift to a military god for helping the Romans win their biggest military battle ever fought in Britain. The operation was a Roman invasion of Scotland in 209 to 210 AD, a battle that isn't very well known. It was also likely one of the bloodiest events in British history. The invasion force comprised 50,000 people, some of whom went as far north as Aberdeenshire. Most likely, Thousands of people from the Caledonian and Meati tribal confederations were killed in the area that's now Scotland. The Romans said that the native chieftains had broken a peace agreement and were therefore rebels, not just normal enemies. It's likely that one of the Roman commanders who had been in the battle buried the sacred bronze hand as part of a ritual shortly after the war ended. The bronze hand was left in a wet area near a Roman fort at Vindolanda on Hadrian's Wall in Northumberland. This area has religious significance. It was connected to a Roman god from the Middle East named Jupiter Dodecahedra, who was originally a local Syrian version of the Roman king of the gods, Jupiter. It was probably put in a small bog as part of a religious ceremony to celebrate the completion of a temple to a god that was only 15 meters away. Number 16. Medieval Italian man replaced his amputated hand with a weapon. This fascinating skeleton shows how an Italian warrior from the Middle Ages got by wearing a weapon on his hand instead of a severed arm. This is just like Barrett from Final Fantasy. Pretty badass. The bones of the medieval man, dating from the 6th to the 8th century AD, were found alongside the skeletons of a headless horse, many greyhounds, and hundreds of other animals. The warrior's hand had been cut off with a blunt object, and he probably died between the ages of 40 and 50. Since the bone ends showed signs of biomechanical pressure, it's possible that the man used the weapon he was buried with as a prosthetic. Indeed, he may have used the knife in place of a hand for a long time. Other clues found on the body suggest this further. The man's teeth, especially on the right side of his mouth, were very worn. This indicates that he probably used them to tighten the straps that held his prosthesis in place. Due to the extreme wear and tear, he'd opened up a pulp cavity in his teeth, which led to a bacterial infection. On his shoulder, he had developed a C-shaped bone ridge, which may have happened as a result of keeping the shoulder extended while tightening the prosthesis with his teeth. It's amazing what we can learn from these kinds of discoveries, but imagine how scary this guy must have been. Number 15. New findings at China's Shanxi Ruins stun archaeologists. Now over to China, where archaeologists recently revealed some major discoveries at the Shanxi Ruins in Sichuan Province, southwest China. After working on the site for a while, pits number 7 and number 8 were dug down to the utensil layer, where many pieces of ivory were found. A new bronze holy tree was also discovered in one of the pits, adding to the site's incredible collection of artifacts. Most of these cultural treasures are currently being cleaned and restored. Since the discovery of 6 additional pits, the long-awaited archaeological dig at the Shanxi Ruins has been in full swing. So far, about 10,000 cultural artifacts from around 3,000 years ago have been unearthed. Archaeologists found 2 large sacrificial pits in 1986, containing thousands of rare ancient treasures, which provided historical evidence of the ancient Shu kingdom from 5,000 years ago. It is considered one of the most important ancient sites in the world. During the current dig, some very rare and important huge bronze containers were found in the number 8 sacrificial pit. It is likely that some of these will be designated as new national treasures. Number 14. Hobbits, because of their height, were first uncovered in an Indonesian cave. The remains of a previously unknown species of human have been discovered in the Philippines. Homo luzonensis, as the species is named, is a mashup of ancient humans and more modern humans. This discovery suggests that early human ancestors might have traveled from Africa to Southeast Asia, indicating the possibility that 3 or more distinct human species coexisted in the region at the same time as our ancestors. Homo floresiensis, sometimes known as the Hobbit due to its diminutive stature, was a humanoid species that existed on the Indonesian island of Flores until roughly 50,000 years ago. The new fragments from Kalau Cave in northern Luzon date back to between 67,000 and 50,000 years ago. According to scientists, these remains, consisting of 13 bones from at least 3 different individuals, including teeth, hand and foot bones, and a fragment of a femur, have been uncovered during excavations since 2007. Number 13. Remains of 17th century vampire discovered in Poland. Skeletal remains of a young woman were recently discovered during excavations in northern Poland. She was buried with a sickle around her neck and a padlock on her foot, both likely intended to prevent her from rising from the dead as a vampire. Bone research revealed that the woman was between the ages of 17 and 21 at the time of her death. Anti-vampire procedures include the iron sickle around her neck and the padlock on her left big toe. Sickles and other sharp implements were used to decapitate the dead in Slavic folklore to stop them from haunting the living. Yet the recent find in the town of Pila is the first instance in Poland's archaeological record of a burial with both a sickle and a padlock. According to historical accounts, locals might have assumed a person was a vampire if they were an outcast for any reason, such as being foreign-born, born out of wedlock, accused of practicing witchcraft, displaying odd physical traits, or simply being ill. For those accused of being a vampire, things were bound to end badly. Number 12. Headless Vikings. While excavating a burial mound in the English seaside resort of Weymouth in June of 2009, archaeologists made a shocking discovery. While digging for the planned Weymouth Relief Road, they uncovered a mass burial site containing 54 dismembered bodies and 51 skulls, which had been piled together in an abandoned Roman quarry. This unexpected find left many people puzzled as to who these individuals were and why they were killed in such a horrific manner. After using rigorous scientific methods, the archaeologists determined that the remains belonged to Norse raiders. The scale of the burial site is astounding, as mass graves are a relatively rare find, especially from this period of history. The bones are believed to belong to people who lived in the early Middle Ages, between the 5th and 10th centuries. While the exact date of the burial remains unclear, it's likely that conflict between the Anglo-Saxons and the Viking invaders contributed to their deaths. Most of the remains appear to belong to men in their late teens or early 20s, with a few older individuals mixed in. None of the victims seem to have been killed in battle, as they all show signs of having been executed. No clothing or other artifacts were found with the remains, leading some to believe that the men were executed while disrobed, possibly as an added form of humiliation. Number 11. The Black Sarcophagus. This strange tomb made of black granite has finally been opened after it originally took the internet by storm. It was in Egypt, in the city of Alexandria, built before Alexander the Great came to the area in 332 BC. When people heard about the discovery, they thought the huge coffin held Alexander's body and that opening the scary-looking sealed coffin would start a huge curse. Neither of these ideas seems to be true, unless stinky sewage makes you feel cursed in some way, because this coffin was full of it. Gross. Inside the sarcophagus, archaeologists found sewage and the bones of 3 people. Egypt's Ministry of Antiquities believes these might be the bones of warriors. At some point in the past, a leak must have allowed sewage water to enter the coffin. Early results show that one of the people found inside had been hit by an arrow, which supports the warrior theory. So far, neither the outside nor inside of the sarcophagus has been found to have any writing or artwork, which is very unusual. Who were these strange people? How and when did they die, except for, I guess we know the how for the arrow guy. What were they doing that deserved this death? None of those questions have been answered, and the Black Sarcophagus remains a mystery. Number 10. MOA Birdfoot. An archaeological crew researching a vast cave system on New Zealand's Mount Owen discovered a frightening and odd artifact more than 3 decades ago. Due to the cave's low light levels, they were confused by what they saw in front of them, a huge claw that looked like that of a dinosaur, complete with flesh and scaly skin. This claw was in such immaculate condition that it could have only come from a recently deceased animal. The claw was quickly retrieved and brought to experts for study. The extraordinary find consisted of the mummified bones of an upland moa, a large extinct bird that lived 3,300 years ago and then disappeared. New Zealand was once home to a unique species of moa known as the upland moa. DNA research claims that moa initially arose about 18.5 million years ago, and there were at least 10 species before they were wiped out in the fastest human-facilitated megafauna extinction known to date. This claw is evidence of that event. It seems people were hunting and mummifying moa birds a little too enthusiastically, and now, sadly, there are none left. Native tribes should be praised for being at one with nature in many ways, yet in other cases, they showed that they could be just as careless as any other group of people known for their carelessness. Number 9. Archaeologists in Kenya discover the oldest known human burial site in Africa. The oldest human grave in Africa dates back about 80,000 years, and it's located in a cemetery. The bones were given the Swahili name Toto, meaning child. An estimated 78,000 years ago, a child between the ages of 2 and 3 was laid to rest here. It was discovered in 2013 at the entrance to the Ponga Yasedi cave in the Kenyan highlands. As archaeologists attempted to remove fragments of old bones, too many of them were breaking in the process. To safely transport the grave to the National Museums of Kenya for further study, the crew had to dig a hole around the skeletons and plaster the entire edifice so it could be removed as one piece. The child's body was intentionally laid to rest, as evidenced by its posture. This conclusion is supported by a technical analysis of the soil. Footprints and the shells of snails that eat earthworms, commonly discovered around human remains, serve as evidence that the burial hole was specifically dug for a ritual burial, one of the earliest such burials ever discovered. Number 8. Grave. The discovery of 7 bones in a circular pit with a bed of severed arms provides new insight into violent fights that occurred over 6,000 years ago. According to experts, the Grizzly Find recounts the story of a horrific raid on a village in eastern France that may have wiped out an entire family. The savage assailants may have tortured their victims and then buried their remains, all in the name of a trophy kill. Researchers from Antique Archaeology and Havisham, along with colleagues from the University of Strasbourg and Bordeaux, uncovered the circular hole, which measured 6.5 feet in depth. The hole was near the town of Bergheim, France. Several human skeletons, including part of a child's head, sit atop the limbs of 7 other humans who had their arms removed. It is speculated that a raid or another type of violent confrontation led to the deaths of 2 adults, 1 female, and 4 children. There was a mound of left arms on top of the victims, and investigators believe the arms were broken and then severed with hand axes. Fragmented hand bones found on the lower stratum point to a grisly end. The skeletons on top, with the exception of 1 male, have both of their arms, leaving it unclear who the arms belong to. Experts aren't sure if the burial was random or part of a macabre ceremony performed after a war. No one knows why the assailants singled out the victims' left arms, but they suspect the limbs were severed as war trophies. Number 7. Roman dodecahedrons. These ancient Roman dodecahedrons from the 2nd and 3rd centuries AD continue to baffle historians and archaeologists today. The pentagonal-shaped device ranges in size from around 3 centimeters to 10 centimeters and features large holes on all sides with knobs at each point. The artifact has been interpreted in various ways, with some suggesting that it was a measuring device or a religious relic. What we do know is that the owners placed a high value on these objects, as hundreds have been uncovered across Europe. In 1739, a Roman dodecahedron was discovered for the very first time. Austria, Belgium, France, Germany, Hungary, Luxembourg, the Netherlands, Switzerland, and the UK have all reported finding at least one identical object since then. Dodecahedrons are not depicted in any pre-modern artwork or written records, making their purpose a mystery. Findings of dodecahedra in coin hoards suggest that their owners either valued them highly or associated them exclusively with monetary transactions. There is also speculation that they were used for divination or as holy items. Number 6. Gobekli Tepe. Before the Egyptian pyramids were built, Gobekli Tepe was already standing, and it's now known as the oldest religious structure in the whole world. This stunning temple complex in southern Turkey, not far from the Syrian border, has been called the very first thing human beings ever built. At least 50 massive T-shaped pillars, some as high as 17 feet, decorated with intricate reliefs of totem animals like wild cats, symbols of death like carrion birds, and game animals like the wild boar that still roam on these hills today, were built by hunter-gatherers before the invention of pottery, agriculture, domestic animals, or even writing. Formerly covering the entire hillside and visible from quite far away, these early Neolithic monoliths measured 30 to 100 feet in diameter, weighed up to 20 tons, and were encased in roughly 20 concentric rings. Once upon a time, it was believed that such a massive structure could not have been built by such ancient people. Without a doubt, this was not a settlement but rather a holy center where ancient peoples gathered for ceremonies. By showing that collective devotion, rather than the city, begot the temple and gathered mankind together, Gobekli Tepe has the potential to change long-held views of social formation. Number 5. Pompei man found crushed to death by large stone while fleeing Mount Vesuvius. Next up, archaeologists in Pompeii have found the body of a man who was killed by a large rock while trying to get away from the exploding volcano. Wow, what a crazy image. I don't think anyone would survive that kind of impact. Yeah, he's definitely dead. In 79 AD, the nearby Mount Vesuvius erupted, killing many people who lived in Pompeii and freezing them in place for all time. This skeleton looks like it belonged to a man who was in the city during the first explosion but got out before it was destroyed, or tried to. But an injury to his leg might have slowed him down before he was crushed by the huge stone flying through the air. Archaeologists in Pompeii say that the leg bone of the skeleton shows signs of infection. He might have had a hard time walking, let alone running. But slow-moving molten lava didn't kill most of the people who died in Pompeii. Instead, a pyroclastic flow, which is a huge cloud of hot gas and stone shards, swept over the city, killing people wherever they were and burying them in ash to keep their last moment in time. Archaeologists think that this deadly cloud hit their newest find and knocked the man back when he turned to look at it. The man, who is thought to be in his 30s, was found on the first floor of a building above a layer of small stones carried by the deadly cloud. Number 4. Terracotta Army. Sometimes it's best just to let things be. For example, the 6,000 terracotta warriors buried with Emperor Qin Shi Huang in China's Xi'an more than 2,000 years ago. China's first emperor was laid to rest in the grandest tomb complex the country had ever seen. Even its defenses, including a mercury moat, are extraordinary. It has a vast underground tunnel system the size of a city, housing everything the emperor may have needed in the afterlife. There are clay figures of the Qin emperor's soldiers, concubines, officials, and slaves buried with him in his tomb. Farmers excavating wells near Xi'an in 1974 made the initial discovery of the 8,000 life-size clay figures. There's a tight rein on further excavation until new technologies are developed that can safely unearth priceless artifacts without causing any damage to them. Because of the reported moat of dangerous mercury surrounding the site of the Chinese emperor's primary burial, researchers are also prohibited from diving inside the central tomb, which housed Qin's palace. Number 3. The Copper Scroll Treasure. Among the many important scrolls found on the northern side of the Dead Sea in the spring of 1952 is the Copper Scroll. Unlike the Dead Sea Scrolls, which were discovered in 1946 and are made of parchment, the Copper Scroll is made of copper and features detailed lettering. The tablet has been the subject of much speculation because some believe it could lead to the location of a massive hoard of gold and silver that was buried in several locations around Jerusalem before the destruction of the Second Temple in 70 AD. In the spring of 1952, in the same cave at Qumran where the Dead Sea Scrolls had been found in 1946, a single copper scroll was uncovered. The writings on the scroll claimed that the treasure trove contains 1,280 talents of gold coins and more than 65 bars of pure gold. And yep, you can bet that ever since then, people have been trying to find this incredible hoard. Number 2. Derinkuyu. Located in the Derinkuyu neighborhood in Turkey's Nefser province, at a depth of 85 meters, is the multi-leveled underground city of Derinkuyu. It may have been able to provide shelter for as many as 20,000 people with livestock and food. To date, it's Turkey's largest excavated underground city and one of many such complexes found across Cappadocia. Facilities like wine and oil presses, stables, cellars, storage chambers, refectories, and chapels were present in the city, as are common in other underground complexes throughout Cappadocia. The Derinkuyu complex is home to an enormous chamber with a barrel-vaulted roof, which can be found on the upper floor. This space served as a religious academy, while the adjacent rooms were used for academic pursuits. Derinkuyu was fully constructed and extensively used as a stronghold during the Arab-Byzantine Wars, which happened from 780 to 1180 AD. The city was connected to other metropolises in the network by tunnels stretching for kilometers. The Middle Byzantine period, which lasted from the 5th through the 9th century, is represented in some of the artifacts discovered in the underground settlements. Well into the 20th century, the local population, Greeks from Cappadocia, used the underground cities as a refuge from persecution. Now it's time for today's topic. Old people in Egypt still talk about a legend passed down through generations, a tale of a mysterious object buried near the pyramids of Giza. In 1922, during an excavation, this legend seemed to come to life when archaeologists uncovered what appeared to be a disc-shaped object, unlike anything they'd ever seen before. The craft, resembling what we now know as a UFO, was found deep beneath the desert sands, sparking whispers of an otherworldly connection to Egypt's ancient past. As the workers dug further, the tension grew. What or who had traveled in this strange vessel? Before more could be revealed, the excavation was abruptly halted. The Egyptian government, along with foreign officials, quickly sealed off the area, classifying all findings. Officially, the discovery never happened, leaving behind only rumors and the fading memory of those who witnessed it. Some believe this craft was linked to the construction of the pyramids, while others insist it's evidence of a hidden, advanced civilization. Whatever the truth, the legend continues to haunt Egypt's desert sands. Number 1. Puma Punu. Recent years have seen a surge in tourism to the remains of Puma Punu, a sacred site in the Bolivian Amazon. According to archaeologists, Puma Punu, which translates to Door of the Puma, was a thriving ancient city that flourished between 500 and 600 CE. Even in the modern era of the 21st century, legends persist that the massive stone blocks used to construct Puma Punu's buildings were cut with such accuracy that only highly developed ancient technology could explain them. Puma Punu is situated on a desert plateau of the Andes Mountains at an altitude of over 12,000 feet, some 45 miles west of modern-day La Paz and close to the still thriving metropolis of Tiwanaku. The Incas prominently included Tiwanaku in their myths since it was believed to be the place where everything began. Incredible smooth stone buildings with finely formed cuts, perfect straight angles, and precisely fitted connections are all on display here. The megaliths are quite large, with some weighing several tons. Several of the buildings are still standing long after their inhabitants departed, but many others are scattered and broken all over the landscape, leaving academics to wonder what might have brought them down. Do you have an explanation for these terrifying things? Do you think people in the past were way more advanced than we're willing to admit? Let us know in the comments below. Also, check out our other cool stuff showing up on screen right now. See you next time.